And we're now going to pick up with the Advisory Council Candidate Forum. This will be an opportunity to hear from each of the Advisory Council candidates and on its list of questions that were chosen by the community. We will do this for the next 45 minutes. And I have all of the Advisory Council candidates standing by. The questions that have been supplied, we have 4 questions today. And I'll read the question and in turn ask each of our AC candidates to speak to this. So the first question up is, are there things that you feel need to be changed with the ARIN policy development process? And I see we have all of our panelists. I'm going to start out with Andrew Dull. Andrew, are there things that you feel need to be changed with the ARIN policy development process?
Thanks, John. So I do think there are things that need to be changed. And over the past year, myself and a couple of other members of the Advisory Council have been working on an update to the PDP, a rewrite of the PDP. And among the things that we included with that are clarity in language, clarity around the petition process, and additional information and process around how the emergency policy and the editorial process. Largely what we've written is the same, but I think that additional clarity is definitely an area where we need some additional input for the policy development process.
Okay, very good. Good to hear. I will now move on to Gary. Gary, are there things that you feel need to be changed with the ARIN policy development process?
The biggest challenges I see with the policy development process is the speed at which policies are adopted. There's always a fine balance between ensuring adequate time to allow stakeholders in the community to have input into the process, ensuring policy is fair and sound, respecting the time constraints of all those who volunteer their time while ensuring the policy problems are addressed quickly to solve for real needs. That being said, as many of the largest hurdles in the policy process have been overcome in the years following IPv4 free pool exhaustion, and many policies have become less controversial, I believe this presents an opportunity to find some efficiencies in the time it takes straightforward and overwhelmingly supported policy process to make it into the NRPM.
Very good. Thank you for that response. I'll move on to Anita. Anita, are there things you feel need to be changed with the ARIN policy development process?
Yeah, I think there's 3 kind of main things. I think we tend to be a little passive by design to serve the ARIN regions. I think we can be more proactive in looking to see are there, best practices or trends we can encourage in the PDP. I mean, we're coming up with a question on IPv6, while still not going beyond the scope of the AC. I feel like there's a role beyond just a NRPM where we can have an impact by being a forcing function. The second thing is I think that more voices should be heard. I mean, traditionally in these communities, we see, kind of the same kind of people giving their opinion. I think cross-pollinating lists, maybe asking members via survey, what's your biggest pain in the rear with ARIN policy, just to get more input. And finally, I think partnering and getting opinions and input from policy and legal people that, are just not necessarily our voices to get more opinions on what we should be doing.
Okay, thank you. I'll now move on to Gus. Gus, are there things that you feel need to be changed with the ARIN policy development process?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. I don't see a video, but I do hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. Yes, I am relatively new to policy development within this community there. And the only thing that I can offer is a greater and varied community input. As Andrew brought up in his candidate speech, including people outside of what has, let me rephrase that, including people, outside of the smaller communities, and, coming from a large network operator, I can, perhaps bring a different perspective there.
Okay, very good. I will move on now to Leif. Leif, are there things you feel need to be changed in the ARIN policy development process?
Hi, good morning, John. I think that time has honed the policy development process really well, and how that process is documented and communicated to the general member community has shifted over the years for certain. But as Andrew mentioned, we are currently working on ways to enhance and simplify the language for improved clarity in that process. But we absolutely need to hear from the community members if there are sticking points within the process. And without those, it's very difficult to make changes in that vacuum.
Okay, thank you. Now I'll move on to Chris Tassett. Chris, are there things you feel need to be changed with the ARIN policy development process?
Yes, thank you very much, John. So there are two areas that I've targeted. So first of all, I did review the work that the PDP working group has done, and I made some contributions to that. But I've reflected on this a little bit more since this question was posed, and it really kind of focused my attention on a couple of areas. One is our emergency PDP and policy suspension, which doesn't get much use, but I managed to see it working firsthand with the wait list issue that came up in the last couple of years. And what it led me to conclude is that we need, I think, something in both of those sections, 10.1 and 10.2, or whatever the new equivalent section numbers will be, that creates a bit of a sense of urgency for the AC to act. In other words, we don't just wait till the next meeting to start dealing with these things, but creates an incentive for us to act more quickly, perhaps start the process within 7 days, finish it within 30 days. There's already a bit of a hint of that in the emergency PDP, where if the board initiates a policy, it says the ARIN Council will review it within 7 days of the end of the discussion period. So there's already kind of one place where it may require us to hold a meeting more quickly than we would otherwise. But I think where we do have emergencies, it's important to act quickly. And so that's one. The other area of focus is on going from last call to the Board of Trustees. The way the rule is set out right now is that in order to advance, you need a roll call vote of 2/3 of the member of the full advisory council. And I'd like to see that change to 2/3 of the members of the advisory council present and entitled to vote at the meeting, because that's more consistent with corporate law requirements for special resolutions. And I think we unnecessarily set an unreasonably high threshold if you end up having 1 or 2 members miss that meeting in order to get something advanced after you've already done all of that work up to that point. I do agree you need more than a 50% +1, but the threshold shouldn't become really onerous because 1 or 2 members aren't present at a meeting. So those are my suggestions.
Thank you, Chris. Now, the final panelist for the question, Matthew Wilder. Are there things you feel need to be changed with the ARIN policy development process?
Thanks, John. I'll take a slightly different angle on this, and I'll say that it's not so much the process itself that I see might need some tweaking, but maybe the tools. So as creatures of habit or perhaps tradition, we use the policy mailing list as our primary tool, but maybe there are other tools available to us now for discussion and polling that might invite more participation from the community.
Excellent. Thank you for that. All right, we're going to move on to our second question. The question is, as an ARIN AC member, how would you balance your views on policy proposals with those of the ARIN community? So I'm going to start out with Anita. Anita, as an ARIN AC member, how would you balance your views on policy proposals with those of the ARIN community?
So yeah, I mean, in general, I have a lot of strong opinions in general about things like internet protocols and ISP operations. But when it comes to roles like this in an advisory capacity, you've got to be totally neutral. I have no nits to pick. I'm not at an ISP. I'm not at a large company. My interest is really the good of the internet, and it's making sure that these things are neutral. I feel like I can be a voice of reason for that. I spent 4 years at the National Science Foundation funding proposals for science and new internet proposals, many of which I didn't agree with, but you have to look beyond that. So I feel like I've tempered, opinions with doing things for a greater good.
Okay, very good. Thank you. I'm going to ask the same question to Gus. Gus, as an RNAC member, how would you balance your views on policy proposals with those of the ARIN community?
Pardon me. I would start by incorporating as many different opinions as I could, use those to expose me to new viewpoints on proposals, yet still maintain a level of neutrality in terms of the industry that I come from and shaping policy there.
Okay, very good. Andrew, same question. As an ARIN advisor, as an RNAC member, how would you balance your views on policy proposals with those of the ARIN community?
Thanks, John. In this question, I think it's important to remember, am I here? Yep.
I can hear you.
Okay, the screen just didn't switch to me video. So anyway, as a AC member, I think it's important to look at the different aspects of where the policy is in the process. And as an individual contributor, I think you have a role to play specifically around on the policy possible mailing list during various points. However, when I'm in the AC meetings itself, I represent the community. My representation, of course, is always, influenced by my personal effects, but at various places, we are asked to judge what the community thinks and move the proposal forward based on what we see in the community. And I do that as part of my work on the AC.
Very good. I'm going to move on to the same question with Gary. Gary, as an RNAC member, how would you balance your views on policy proposals with those of the ARIN community?
I think it's important to draw on your experience and the experience of the other AC members because they represent a wide cross-section of the community. And so I think that judgment is valuable. So it's important to use that expertise while at the same time explaining that to the community and taking the expertise from the community as well and working together to build a critical consensus towards what you're trying to achieve.
Okay, very good. I'll now move it to Leif. Leif, what do you think, as an RNAC member, how would you balance your views on policy proposals with those of the ARIN community?
Well, John, I think that over the last 6 years, I've done a pretty good job at finding the right balance between both my personal views, professional corporate views, and those of the community. Just by staying up to date with the mailing list and engaging with community members at both ARIN meetings and at NANON meetings where I attend, it helps to stay informed of how the different policies are impacting the different scopes of the member communities. But like all of the members of the AC, all of those impacts are taken into account both during the policy development process and during the adoption process.
Okay, and I'll move on to Matthew. Matthew, as an RNAC member, how would you balance your views on policy proposals with those of the ARIN community?
Yeah, my primary role in AC would not be to push my personal views or corporate views on policy, but rather sense the needs of the community and seek out opportunities to move those proposals toward consensus whenever possible. And this is where I think the title of shepherd is quite apt. It suggests a role of gentle leadership. You're not going to be able to force the community to do anything. It's just a matter of seeking out, is there a path toward consensus here? And can I achieve that as a shepherd?
Excellent. And final panelist question, final panelist for the question, Chris Tassett, as an RNAC member, how would you balance your views on policy proposals with those of the ARIN community?
Thank you very much for that question. So this is something I do all the time in my day job as a lawyer. I engage in a lot of advocacy, and a big part of good advocacy is understanding what other points of view are and trying to create as much of a win-win as you can. And in this case, it's not so much trying to create a win from my own personal point of view, but really for the community. So I look at my opinion as one of several that has to be taken into account. I try to particularly focus in on perspectives that are unique or may otherwise be underrepresented. And then I put those through the filter of the three factors in our principles of internet number resource policy and try to take into account how do each of those points of views advance those three objectives. And that's kind of the discipline that I've imposed on myself. So by doing that, I don't think it enhances my point of view any higher than any other particularly necessarily. Thank you.
Okay. Very good. Thank you. We're going to move on to our third question. I'm going to ask each of the panelists, how do you think we should get more of the community participating in the ARIN policy process? Let me start out. I'll start out with Leif. Leif, how do you think we should get more of the community participating in the ARIN policy development process?
Well, obviously, as history shows, what we need is more contentious issues. No. Reality is, people aren't really interested in developing policies on a day-to-day basis, and kind of even occasionally, unless something impacts them specifically and disruptively. So if we're trying to figure out how to engage the community without being contentious or disruptive, well, we need to reach out to those community members and find out, what they feel is going to help them become engaged. We've got the fellowship program and ARIN on the Road, right? Both of those try to reach out and increase that participating community. And we've done some things at NANOG as well, both in the smaller policy showcasing meetings and just the overview speeches where this is just what's happening. And that's a way to keep our voices being heard by the different segments of the community, but it's difficult. And I don't know that I have an answer yet that meets everything.
Okay, good to hear. I'll move on to Gus. Gus, how do you think we should get more of the community participating in the ARIN policy process?
I'll echo a little bit what Leif said. Policy development can be a very dry subject there, and I believe that definitely we need more community outreach to engage other parties and draw them in. Whether that be from social media or Anita mentioned on a couple of questions prior about sending out surveys to the community to see, to get their feedback.
Okay, very good. I'll ask the same question of Andrew Dull now. Andrew, how do you think we should get more of the community participating in the ARIN policy process?
Thanks, John. What I think is important for us to look at is who are participating now and who is not participating. And one of the things that I think we've seen over the years is that the public policy mailing list, while good as a discussion forum perhaps, is perhaps not always the best way to engage people and bring new people into the process. And we need to figure out how to engage people in a manner that isn't on a mailing list. And communication styles change over time, and what was appropriate 20 years ago may not be appropriate now. So I think we need to use different technology to communicate. And third, I think we need to figure out why large organization voices cannot be heard in a public forum. And I know some organizations don't like their employees speaking publicly, whether either individual contributors or not. But we need to hear those voices from large operators because they're part of our community. They fund our community to the largest extent, but we need to hear from them.
Okay, thank you. Matthew Wilder, here's the question. How do you think we should get more of the community participating in the ARIN policy process?
Yeah, I think some of the answers here have really touched on what I would say is, partly it's a matter of what's contentious and maybe, dare I say, the elephant in the room is the maturity of policy itself. And, we've seen a transition from a free pool to being one of transfers satisfying the needs of many of the members. So it's now more a matter of maintenance and tweaking, I'd say, than sort of blazing that trail. So part of it's just, what are the particulars that come up in policy development? And then I think also technology can play a role in how we collaborate and how we bring in those voices. So yeah, I think there is opportunity to bring in more from the community, but it's that challenge of yeah, just making sure there is a pathway for people to speak. And I think ARIN has done great things to make sure that there is outreach, and just continuing to do that will engage those voices that can be reached.
Okay, very good. Chris Tassett, how do you think we should get more of the community participating in the ARIN policy process?
Hi, thank you. So COVID has certainly taught us that we can do a lot more collaboratively online than we ever A, wanted to, and B, thought we could do. And I think leveraging that necessity in two ways could be very helpful. One is to take the ARIN on the road model and put it online. In other words, create ARIN on the web sessions that would have the same sort of structure as ARIN on the road, but bring them online. I think you might end up getting participation from more people who either can't afford, can't get the time to travel to them, even if they're somewhat local events or close to them, or don't have the travel budgets to go to the nearest one. The second thing is to perhaps have some mini online PPMs. I mean, we have PPMs at NANOG occasionally and so on, but there's no reason we couldn't, especially where there are some either very important or very contentious proposed policies, do some online PPMs and try to hold them at times of day that are likely to work best for the multiplicity of time zones involved, just like we have with this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary, now I'm going to ask you, how do you think we should get more of the community participating in the ARIN policy process?
Well, I agree with Leif that policy in the last few years has generally become less contentious since V4 run out, and that's maybe dissuaded some people from participating. I think the best way we can increase participation is to increase outreach and reduce barriers for adopting V6. I think if we can increase adoption, we'll see more interest from the community as they encounter new problems and use cases that we haven't yet considered. It'll also bring in new members and help bring old contributors back into the fold.
Very good, thank you. And our final panelist for this question would be Anita. Anita, how do you think we should get more of the community participating in the ARIN policy process?
I think cross-pollinating communities. I mean, I come by and large from security communities, so I think cross-pollinating to broaden the communities to include security. There's a lot of up and coming generational people looking at machine learning and networking. These people think a lot about address space and where they need to go, what they need to do. So I think reaching out to them, I think constantly also reminding people they can make a difference. I saw this again in the small RNE community when there was a lot of buzz a couple of years ago about RPKI. And it's not necessarily numbering policy, but people were like, how do we make a difference with ARIN? So I think getting people interested in a certain topic. And I think also being proactive and saying like, hey, we see these trends in a lot of forums talking about this. Is someone interested in addressing a policy on this? So maybe it's not necessarily one of people on the AC, but it's someone in the community. So I think urging that could make a difference too.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, our candidate forum's moving on to the final question, and I'll ask each of the ARIN AC candidates what they think. The final question is, do you believe a role of the advisory council should be to write policy to encourage the adoption of IPv6? Starting out, I'm going to start out with Matthew Wilder. Do you believe a role of the ARIN AC should be to write policy to encourage the adoption of IPv6?
Wow, what a great question. So I think this is one that I've considered a lot over the last few years, and it's a tricky one because ARIN is not a regulator, so it doesn't have teeth, nor should it. So on the other hand, obviously IPv6 deployment is critical for the health of the internet in light of IPv4 exhaust. So weaving in IPv6 deployment as a must, or even things like transfers of IPv4 addresses, that's something that could be done. But then what are the consequences that we can expect? So, others have raised the point that you could see sort of meaningless ceremonies with IPv6, either someone just getting their IPv6 addresses to check off that box, or even deploying it in a way that doesn't actually affect the IPv6 deployment across the net. So those are the pitfalls I'd say to watch out for. But I think if the community does support this idea, that's one where I think there is something for the AC to explore, but just being mindful of those pitfalls.
Okay, thank you. Going to move on to Leif. Leif, do you believe the role of advisory council should be to write policy to encourage the adoption of IPv6?
The advisory council, as members of the community, are absolutely able to write policy proposals on any pertinent topic, right, including IPv6 adoption. The deeper question, I guess, is whether or not policy that encourages adoption can meet the tenets of the development process, right? Whether it's fair and impartial and technically sound, and if it's supported by the community. And does it pass any operational and legal challenges by ARIN staff? And then the board of trustees alignment to the business model, right? It's got to hit all of those things. So yes, we can do it. But it's got to hit all those things before it can ever be adopted. And I guess that means I'm looking forward to the next IPv6 adoption encouragement policy proposal.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to move on to Anita. Anita, do you believe the role of the ARIN Advisory Council should be to write policy to encourage the adoption of IPv6?
Yes, I 100% firmly think so. I think if you have IPv4 already, do with it as you please, but I think it's just the right thing to do to encourage IPv6 adoption. We've had this discussion for a decade now. It's the right time, and I think it's a time for the AC to be proactive in this.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to Andrew Dull. Andrew, do you believe a role of the advisory council should be to write policy to encourage the adoption of IPv6?
So yes, I think there's a role for the advisory council to play for the adoption of IPv6. But I think the primary issue that we face right now with IPv6 is education and actually going out and doing it. I don't think the address policy at this point is specifically prohibiting or really slowing down V6 adoption. I think the three largest areas that we need to see to move things forward with IPv6 is educating enterprises about turning on their IPv6, getting home broadband routers by default to use IPv6, because if you buy some of the home's products today, they still don't ship with IPv6 turned on by default. And finally, some of the smaller broadband providers need some help just getting IPv6 going because we still don't see that deployed as much as we'd like to. So there's a role here, but I think education and encouraging the industry to move forward is probably a greater role that we could help with in terms rather than specific policy changes right now.
Okay, very good. I'm going to move on to Gus. Gus, how do you believe a role of the ARIN Advisory Council should be to write policy to encourage the adoption of IPv6?
Pardon me. Absolutely, I do. We've been, we have deployed IPv6 in our network back in, I think we started in like 2005, 2006, and we weren't the early, one of the early ones out there. NTT was, I believe, but throughout my tenure here at where I work, I have always encouraged our customers to use IPv6. And yes, we do need to, I think it would be good to write policy to encourage the adoption. But on the other hand, it's like, will the industry actually, adhere to that policy or want to adopt it even in 2020 now?
Okay, very good. Chris Tassett, same question. Do you believe a role of the advisory council should be to write policy to encourage the adoption of IPv6? Did we lose you, Chris?
Sorry, I forgot to unmute. Apologies. So I'm going to reframe the question a tiny bit. So the way I look at this is I think it's the role of the advisory council to help develop, because the advisory council as a whole doesn't write policy. Individuals or small groups of people write policy and propose it. And of course, as Leif said, individual AC members are members of the community and can do that. But I wanna be careful about encouraging versus trying to instill too much discipline on the community. Whatever actions we take to encourage IPv6 adoption, and I think the AC has already done a lot. If you look at the PDP as it's written, it's not exactly that difficult to get IPv6 resources for anyone who has a legitimate need or any kind of history with IPv4 resources. So it's really important to look at our PDP elements. And one of them in technical soundness is maximizing resource availability to parties with operational need. And so what I wouldn't want to see happen is us going overboard and actually penalizing people for not switching. I think we want to encourage, but I don't think we want to penalize, because our role is to serve all of our community and to meet all of the operational needs of all parties. And hand in glove with that goes the mandate of ARIN to ensure directory accuracy. If we're not careful and we go too overboard, not just encouraging, but potentially trying to discourage other things too hard, we may get unintended consequences, which is basically behavior that circumvents the desired policy and results in inaccurate directory information. So yes, I believe we should do everything and promote IPv6 adoption as much as we can, but we need to do it in a careful, measured, thoughtful way that avoids unintended consequences.
Okay, thank you. We're on our last question and we're on our last panelist. Gary, do you believe the role of the ARIN Advisory Council should be to write policy to encourage the adoption of IPv6?
I believe absolutely they should both write policy and advocate for IPv6. The Advisory Council is diverse enough and uniquely positioned to both have a view to and the experience in dealing with the challenges faced both with the exhaustion of V4 and the subsequent transfer market, as well as V6 adoption. The Advisory Council has a wealth of knowledge that is invaluable in coming up with creative solutions that should be applied to their fullest to remove any hurdles to deploying V6. That being said, I don't support creating policies to work around some barriers that are best addressed through other means, such as the fee schedule.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to thank all of our panelists. This concludes the ARIN AC Candidate Forum, and a round of applause for all of them. Hopefully this will be something useful for people as voting is coming up, starting at 5 o'clock and running, starting at 3 o'clock and running for a week.